You're not even good enough to clean. Mrs. Marcia's voice thundered across the room full of guests. Helena, on her knees scrubbing the already shiny floor, held the wet rag with trembling hands. Her face burned with shame as the visitors exchanged disdainful glances and muffled laughter. It was as if they were mocking her very existence. Mrs. Marcia pointed to a speck of dust barely visible. See this? That's why poor people never get ahead. They can't even do the basics right. The words cut like knives. Helena lowered her head, trying to hide the tears burning her eyes. One of the women added mockingly, "If she can't even clean, imagine her doing anything else." Laughter filled the room, shattering Helena's heart into pieces. Every giggle was another brick in the wall of humiliation surrounding her. Suddenly, Mrs. Marcia grabbed the bucket and dumped the water on the floor. "Now clean properly," she ordered, crossing her arms. The splash was followed by more muffled laughter. Helena knelt to wipe it up but was pushed back with a light kick. At that moment, she was no longer a person. She was just a shadow, invisible, kneeling under cruel eyes. The heavy silence, broken only by mockery, screamed that she was worthless. Her heart raced as her dignity flowed with the water across the cold floor. Her hands trembled, but she said nothing. She swallowed her tears like poison. She knew that any response could cost her the job, and worse, the food on her daughter's plate. Humiliation was the silent price of survival. When she finished, the guests passed by, lifting their skirts as if avoiding dirt. One muttered, "These women should be grateful they have anything to do at all." The words burned like iron on Helena's skin. She left without looking back. The sun shone outside, but there was no light within her. Her heart was so heavy that each step felt like punishment. She could still hear Mrs. Marcia's voice mocking her in her head. That day, Helena didn't just lose the little dignity she had left. She gained an invisible scar that would change her life forever. A wound so deep that, unknowingly, it would become the spark of her transformation. The way home felt endless. On the crowded bus, Helena kept her eyes fixed on the floor, as if it could swallow her shame. Every time she remembered the guests' laughter, her heart tightened. The cruel phrase echoed, "You're not even good enough to clean." People around her chatted and laughed, but to Helena, everything was distant. Her body was on the bus, but her soul was still kneeling on that living room floor, being kicked before strangers. Her hands trembled, hidden in her lap, as if the world itself was laughing at her. When she got home, Sophia ran to hug her. Her daughter's smile was a beam of light piercing the darkness, but it also hurt, reminding her she had to stay strong. Helena tried to smile, but the mask broke. She collapsed in tears in her daughter's arms. "Mom, what happened?" Sophia asked, worried. Helena shook her head, trying to deny it, but her teary eyes betrayed her. Tears flowed like a flood, and she sobbed quietly, afraid to scare the child. Sophia stroked her hair, not fully understanding. Helena wanted to explain, but how could she tell her daughter that her mother had been treated worse than an object? That to others, she was worthless? Silence was her only defense. That night, while cooking a simple dinner, Helena watched Sophia study at the table. Part of her wanted to give up, to disappear from the world, but another part, fragile, flickering, wanted to resist. Before bed, Helena faced the mirror. Her face was tired, her eyes swollen, her posture bent. Mrs. Marcia's voice still echoed, crushing what little self-worth remained. "Am I really useless? Will my life ever change?" she whispered. She turned off the light and lay beside Sophia, eyes wide open. Sleep never came. The cruel words were chains, binding her soul. Deep inside, she knew this humiliation would never be forgotten. It would be a scar forever, or the start of a transformation no one could imagine. 2 days after the humiliation, Helena was called by Mrs. Marcia. She entered the house with her heart pounding, expecting criticism. Instead, she received only coldness. "I don't need you anymore. Incompetent people only cause trouble." The woman shoved a crumpled bill into her hand, as if throwing scraps to an animal. Helena's legs trembled. She wanted to respond, to defend herself, but her voice died in her throat. She simply took the money, eyes filling with tears, and left in silence. The weight of that farewell felt heavier than any bucket she had ever carried. On the street, her heart pounded painfully. Every step echoed the cruel phrase haunting her. "You're not even good enough to clean." It was as if the entire city repeated it in unison, mocking her shame. She walked with her head down, hiding her face. At home, Sophia greeted her with a smile, unaware of what had happened. Helena forced a smile back, but inside, despair consumed her. How would she feed her daughter now? How would she pay for her school supplies? That night she gave the last portion of rice to Sophia and went to bed without eating. Her stomach ached, but her soul hurt more. The silence of the kitchen screamed her failure, reminding her that she had nothing left. Lying down, she replayed the laughter of the guests and the arrogance of her former boss. The more she remembered, the more convinced she became that she was nothing. That cruel sentence had been branded into her mind. Sleep never came. Only silent tears rolled down, soaking the pillow. Each sob was muffled so Sophia wouldn't wake up. Helena wanted to be strong, but her strength was gone. For a moment she thought about giving up entirely. Who would miss her? To society she was disposable, a shadow. But then she turned and saw Sophia sleeping, clutching her school notebook, dreaming of becoming a doctor. Helena broke down even more. How could she give up when her daughter still believed in her? At that moment she realized she had to keep going, not for herself, but for Sophia. That fragile spark of love was the only thing keeping her alive. The next morning Helena left home with swollen eyes. She wandered the streets until she sat down in a small square. There she found Joanna, her childhood friend. At the sight of her, Helena couldn't hold back anymore. She sat on the bench and poured her heart out, sobbing. Joanna hugged her tightly. "Helena, you are not what that woman said. Don't let her destroy who you are." But the kind words seemed to fall short. Deep inside, Helena still heard Mrs. Marcia's voice echoing like a curse. Helena cried so much that it felt like years of accumulated pain were spilling out. Joanna held her hand, but even that comfort wasn't enough. The emptiness in Helena's chest was overwhelming. "I just wanted Sophia to be proud of me," she confessed through tears. "But how can she if I can't even keep a job?" Shame suffocated her. Joanna sighed. "Maybe it's time for you to start something of your own. Something no one can take from you." Helena laughed bitterly. "Me? Start something? I'm not even good enough to clean." The silence between them was heavy. Helena looked at her calloused hands and wondered if they could ever do more than hold a rag. Yet deep in her chest, a faint spark began to glow. When she got home, Sophia ran to her with a colorful drawing. Two figures holding hands, a little girl in a doctor's coat and a smiling woman with a broom. "That's you, Mom. The strongest woman in the world." Helena burst into tears again. But this time it was different. It wasn't just pain. It was hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could be more than what the world said. That night, she lay down still broken, but with her heart slightly warmer. Sophia believed in her. And maybe believing was the first step to rising again. Without knowing it, Helena was on the edge of the most unexpected turning point of her life. The days dragged on painfully. Helena still woke up early, but there was nowhere to go. The emptiness of a broken routine hurt as much as the humiliation itself. She felt like she had lost not only her job, but her very purpose. One afternoon she met Joanna again. Her friend insisted, "You should start your own cleaning service. Do it your way without arrogant bosses." Helena scoffed bitterly. "Me? I don't even have money to buy groceries." But Joanna persisted. "You have something money can't buy. Dedication, care, honesty. People need that. You're different, Helena." Her words lingered, but fear still outweighed hope. That night, Sophia approached her as she washed dishes. "Mom, if you had your own business, I'd help. I could make flyers, post online. I know you're the best." Helena looked at her daughter, her heart aching with emotion. Her daughter's words felt like a calling. What if it was possible? What if she could create something no one could take away? But then, the venomous voice of Mrs. Marcia returned in her mind. "You're not even good enough to clean." The fear of failure consumed her, like invisible chains binding her. Yet the idea wouldn't leave her thoughts. It flickered like a weak light in the darkness. Late one night, unable to sleep, Helena whispered to herself, "What if I try? What if I prove I'm not useless?" Her heart raced at the very thought. She knew it would be hard. She knew she would stumble. But for the first time, she imagined a different future. Perhaps that humiliation had unknowingly planted the seed of change. Helena closed her eyes in silence. The pain was still there, but alongside it, a fragile new feeling emerged. Hope. And it was with that fragile hope that she would take the first step toward changing her life forever. The next morning, Helena woke up different. The weight of sadness was still there, but something new pushed her forward. She grabbed an old notebook and wrote in big letters, "Professional cleaning service." Just seeing the words on paper made her heart race. She had no money, no business experience, but she had something bigger, the need to prove she was capable. With Joanna's help, she printed simple flyers. Sophia eagerly posted them at bakeries and markets. It was little, but it was already an act of defiance. The beginning was brutal. Many laughed. Others crumpled the papers and threw them away. Some mocked openly. "A cleaning company? That won't last long." Each phrase cut like a knife, but Helena stayed standing. Her first client came almost by accident, an elderly lady who needed help. Helena cleaned every corner with such care that in the end she heard, "You have golden hands." Tears welled up, but she smiled silently. That simple compliment was fuel to a nearly extinguished flame. Helena returned home transformed. For the first time in ages, she felt valued. Sophia cheered, "I told you, Mom, you're the best." More small jobs followed. Each service was done to perfection. Helena wasn't just cleaning. She was pouring her soul into every detail. But mockery still haunted her. Some said her business would never last, that she'd always be just a maid. Helena cried alone at times, but kept going for her daughter's sake. Sophia celebrated every step. She kept the flyers as trophies, sketched imaginary logos, and dreamed along with her mom. "Our business will grow, I know it will." That night, Helena stared at the ceiling and whispered a promise. No one would ever again say she was worthless. And with small but firm steps, the impossible began to take shape. Little by little, word spread. Clients praised Helena's dedication, and neighbors noticed her work. The money was small but made a difference. Each payment, no matter how tiny, was celebrated like a grand victory. But with praise came cruel whispers. At the bakery, Helena overheard, "She thinks she'll be a businesswoman? Poor thing, soon she'll be begging for a job again." The words stung, but they no longer crushed her completely. Still, the ghost of Mrs. Marcia haunted her during weak moments. "You're not even good enough to clean," echoed relentlessly, trying to erase her hope. Helena shook, but this time she refused to bow. Sophia remained her biggest motivator. The girl helped organize a makeshift schedule in a notebook, drew symbols for the company, and applauded every new client. To her, Helena was already a champion. Joanna never let her give up either. "You're growing, Helena. No one can take this from you." Her friend's belief became Helena's strength. Every house cleaned was more than work. It was a silent response to humiliation. Helena didn't just want to survive. She wanted to prove she was worthy. Challenges persisted. Many still saw her as just a maid, someone without a future. Their disdain burned inside her, but also fueled her determination. One rainy night she counted her earnings, a handful of coins. Yet she smiled. It wasn't wealth, but it was hers. Looking at Sophia asleep, Helena whispered, "I'll make it, my daughter. I'll give you the future you deserve." And in that moment she realized the seed planted by humiliation was finally starting to bloom. Determined to grow, Helena and Joanna took a bold step. They named the business Shine and Care. They bought plain white t-shirts and hand-painted the logo. For Helena, that uniform was more than clothing. It was armor. Neighbors laughed when they saw it. "A cleaning company? She thinks she owns the world." Helena smiled without replying, but inside, she stored every word as fuel. Soon a bigger opportunity arrived, cleaning a law office. Helena almost refused out of fear but forced herself to accept. She knew she had to risk it. The office was in bad shape, but she and Joanna worked meticulously. Every desk gleamed, every window sparkled, every detail was perfect. By the time they finished, the place looked new. The lawyers walked in, astonished. "We've never seen anything like this. You care for every corner as if it were your own home." Helena held back tears, but her heart soared with pride. This victory brought recognition, but also envy. A competitor spread rumors, saying Helena charged cheap because she wasn't skilled. The lies hurt, but she had already learned to rise. Back home, Sophia ran to hug her. "Mom, I knew you'd do it," Helena cried, this time from joy. For the first time, she truly felt seen. That night, she looked at the uniform hanging on the chair and smiled. It wasn't just fabric. It was a symbol of her struggle and resilience. Helena knew more battles awaited, but she also knew one thing. She was no longer invisible. And she swore she would never again be treated as worthless. The phone rang on a cloudy morning. Helena answered with a trembling voice, not knowing her life was about to change. On the other end, a manager from a prestigious law office asked for her services. A full cleaning before an important business meeting. Her heart pounded. It was the biggest chance of her life, but also the riskiest. A mistake could destroy everything she had built. That night she couldn't sleep, repeating in her head, "If I fail, they'll never call me again." The next day, when she arrived, she froze. The office was sophisticated, filled with expensive furniture and delicate decorations. Helena took a deep breath. She had to prove she wasn't just a maid. She was someone who transformed spaces. She and Joanna started working. Every window shone, every desk was polished like gold. Every detail was flawless. The fresh scent of cleanliness spread across the office. She overheard whispers. "Just 2 cleaners." Helena gripped the rag tighter and kept going. Hours later, the result was breathtaking. The office looked brand new. The lawyers walked in, stunned. One said, "It's impeccable. We've never seen anything like this." Helena fought back tears, her heart overflowing with pride. When she received the payment, the manager looked her in the eyes and said, "You don't just clean, you care. That's priceless." Those words buried themselves deep in her soul, healing part of her wounds. On the way home, Sophia rushed to the door. "Mom, how did it go?" Helena hugged her tightly, whispering with tears in her eyes. "Today, my daughter, today I felt seen." But deep inside, fear lingered. What if this is just luck? What if it all disappears tomorrow? Helena didn't know it yet. But this was only the beginning of her real test. A few days later, an unexpected surprise came. A local journalist, impressed by the law office's transformation, wanted to know more. She reached out, asking to tell Helena's story. Helena almost refused. She had never shared her personal struggles with anyone. But Joanna and Sophia insisted, "Your story needs to be heard." With her heart racing, Helena agreed. During the interview, she cried, recalling the humiliation, the dismissal, and the nights of despair. But she also spoke of her daughter, the strength she found, and the courage to start over. Every word was raw, real, and moving. Days later, the headline appeared. From humiliation to entrepreneurship, the woman who turned pain into hope. The story spread across the city. Helena could hardly believe people were now speaking of her with respect. Her phone rang non-stop. New clients wanted to hire the woman whose story had touched so many. Shine and Care was no longer a fragile dream. It was becoming a trusted name. On the streets, people stopped her. "Congratulations, Helena. You deserve it." She smiled, though the scars were still fresh inside. Recognition didn't erase the past, but it was a victory she had never imagined. Sophia was ecstatic. "Mom, now everyone knows who you are." The pride in her daughter's eyes was Helena's greatest reward, but success also drew envy. Some whispered, "Just another poor woman trying to get attention." Helena tried to ignore them, though the words still stung. Still, one thing was certain: she was no longer invisible. She had become an inspiration. But the brighter she shone, the closer the shadows crept back. Life was finally smiling at Helena. Clients multiplied, opportunities appeared, and her small business grew stronger each day. But one Saturday morning, the past came back to haunt her. At the neighborhood market, she heard a chilling voice. Well, if it isn't my ex-maid. Helena's blood ran cold. She turned and locked eyes with Mrs. Marcia, still radiating arrogance. The woman smirked. So you're the businesswoman everyone's talking about? Funny. Someone who wasn't even good enough to clean now thinks she's important. Her words were loud enough for everyone around to hear. Helena tried to ignore her, but Mrs. Marcia wasn't done. She began spreading poison, claiming Helena had been fired for laziness and dishonesty. Shoppers whispered, some even chuckled. Days later, the rumors had spread like wildfire. Clients began calling with doubts. Some canceled contracts altogether. Helena felt the ground crumble beneath her. Everything she had worked so hard for was slipping away. Nights returned to being soaked with tears. The cruel phrase from her past echoed louder than ever. You're not even good enough to clean. Joanna tried to lift her up. You can't let her destroy what you've built. But Helena was too fragile, paralyzed by fear. The shadow of her past was back, stronger, sharper, more merciless than before. Once again, Helena stood at the crossroads, surrender to humiliation or fight to prove her worth. Mrs. Marcia's lies spread quickly. Helena watched as old clients disappeared. Contracts were canceled without explanation. Each lost call felt like a knife stabbing her chest. One morning she received the harshest blow yet. A large contract, one that could have changed her life, was canceled. The reason? Rumors that she was untrustworthy, that she stole from houses. Helena dropped the phone and collapsed to the floor. Mrs. Marcia wasn't satisfied with gossip alone. She personally called clients, spreading cruel fabrications, dripping venom into their ears. And it worked. Helena's reputation, built with sweat and tears, began to crumble. That night, Helena knelt in the kitchen and cried harder than ever. It was as if she were back on that humiliating day, kneeling before strangers, mocked and invisible. The past had returned to devour her whole. Sophia found her in tears and hugged her tightly. Mom, don't give up. You already won once. You'll win again. But the pain was so deep Helena could hardly believe it. Joanna also tried to lift her spirits, reminding her of the clients who still trusted her. But Helena's heart was too heavy. Maybe she's right. Maybe I really am worthless, she whispered through sobs. The silence of that night was suffocating. The uniform hanging on the chair seemed to mock her, a cruel reminder that her dream was falling apart. Helena cried until she had no strength left. Yet amid the darkness, a small flame resisted. Her love for her daughter. It was that fragile flame that would keep her alive, even after the lowest blow of her life. When everything seemed lost, Sophia approached her mother with unwavering eyes. Mom, you always told me that those who work with heart never lose. I believe in you. Her words breathed life into Helena's weary soul. Joanna stood by her too. You've fallen before and stood up again. You can't let this woman destroy you twice. Remember, this dream is yours. Tears streamed down Helena's face, but a strength began to stir within her. Then came an unexpected chance. She was recommended to handle the cleaning of a major business event. Risky, yes, but also the perfect opportunity to prove herself once and for all. Helena hesitated. The fear was immense, but she knew she couldn't refuse. If she failed, it would be the end. If she succeeded, it would silence every cruel voice. The night before, she couldn't sleep. Kneeling beside her bed, she prayed silently. Lord, give me strength. Not for me, but for my daughter. On the morning of the event, she put on her uniform like armor. Her hands shook, but her eyes were steady. It was time to face the world again. On the way, memories of humiliation came back, but so did Sophia's words. Her heart beat between fear and courage. Arriving at the venue, she breathed deeply. The hall was enormous, full of details demanding perfection. She looked at her reflection in a window and whispered, "Today, I'll show who I truly am." She didn't yet know that the shadow of her past was waiting there. The grand hall buzzed with businessmen, lawyers, and guests. Helena and her team moved with precision, every detail handled with care. It was more than cleaning. It was her chance at redemption. Suddenly, a familiar, icy voice rang out. "Look at that. The useless one cleaning for rich people." Mrs. Marcia, smirking, made sure everyone heard. Helena's heart squeezed, but this time she didn't bow. She kept working, stronger, letting her actions speak louder than any insult. Guests began to notice. The space sparkled. The air was fresh. Every detail flawless. Some praised her openly, impressed with her dedication. Frustrated, Mrs. Marcia tried again. "Don't be fooled, she's always been incompetent." But this time the looks weren't against Helena. They turned on her accuser. The heavy silence said it all. When the event ended, the organizers applauded. A businessman shook Helena's hand. "You're not just good, you're the best." Tears streamed down her face, this time tears of victory. Mrs. Marcia left hurriedly, choking on her own venom. And Helena, at last, felt free of the chains that had bound her for so long. At home she hugged Sophia tightly. "We did it, my daughter. We did it." In that moment, Helena understood. Her pain had never been meaningless. It had prepared her for this day, her true turning point. After the event, Helena's life was never the same again. Recognition grew, new clients poured in, and for the first time her name carried respect. What had begun with simple flyers was now becoming a real business. As her company grew, Helena made a decision. She wouldn't walk this path alone. She began hiring other women who, like her, carried stories of pain and humiliation. Each employee didn't just get a job, they received a second chance. Sophia watched it all with pride. To her, her mother wasn't just a cleaner or a businesswoman. She was living proof of courage and resilience. "Mom, you didn't just clean houses, you cleaned the path for our lives," she said one day, moving Helena to tears. News about her social business spread quickly. Helena was invited to speak at schools and community events. She shared her story not as a tale of sorrow but of hope. Her words lit a fire in others who felt invisible, showing them that rising again was possible. In the neighborhood, eyes that once looked down on her now shone with respect. The shadow of Mrs. Marcia had faded, swallowed by the greatness Helena had built. Her former boss's silence became the sweetest revenge. At the inauguration of her company's new headquarters, Helena stood before a crowd, voice trembling with emotion. "One day they told me I wasn't even good enough to clean. Today I know I am good enough for much more, to transform lives." The hall erupted in thunderous applause. Helena was no longer invisible. Her scar still existed, but now it gleamed like proof that pain could be turned into strength. From a cruel humiliation, she had built an empire of dignity. Looking at her smiling employees, her grateful clients, and her proud daughter, Helena realized it wasn't just her life that had changed, it was the lives of all those who believed in second chances. Her story became a powerful reminder. No matter how hard they try to erase you, there is always a flame within you waiting to reignite. And if Helena's journey touched your heart, stay with us. Many more stories of pain and triumph are yet to come. Subscribe and be part of this chain of hope and inspiration.